culture of today and you ask them what it is about
pop culture
that they like, and the first thing they'll say is the beat.
Get yourself addicted. Get yourself addicted.
Welcome in to the Pop Culture Piledriver. Get addicted to the content. I am Jason Rossi. You can be followed across all social media platforms at Jason D Rossi. You can follow us over on the Twitter machine at Pop Culture PD, and it will instantly make you more wholesome. It will. Just try it. Watch what happens. And with me, as always, my tag team partner in the podcast sphere. He can be followed on Twitter at Billy 2411 because he got booted out in the past. You can even see it in his little profile. All other social media platforms at Billy D 2411. He is Billy D. What's going on, man?
Hey, yo.
My man. Subscribe over on iTunes. You can search Pop Culture Piledriver. Find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. Like and subscribe over on the YouTube. You can check us out as a part of the Facebook Dork Shared Gooniverse page. That is Dork Shared Gooniverse, which we're there with Dork. You get content from them. You get content from Mac and Goo. Content from I've Heard It Both Ways. You get content from Too Long Didn't Read. You get content from Change My Mind. You get
Content machine.
It really is. It is just, and it's free. It's the best part. It's free. Not free, but good for your back and in covering your chest is the merch that we have over at TeePublic. You can search for Pop Culture Piledriver. That's a Chunky and all the other podcasts we mentioned as well. Music coming from our guys over at Oh Yeah. Bill, any summer jams? What do we got cooking over there with those guys?
Yeah, so Lower Than You is like their best summery. Actually, their songs are all pretty summery vibey. So go check them out. And my buddy Rye put out a solo single under Rye McD. So go check that out as well.
Rye McD is in McD's Nuts.
Yep.
Our podcast nonprofit partner, Frank Says Hi. You can check them out. We're going to be doing some pretty interesting things over the next few months. We'll also be a part of the Buzz Off for Kids with Cancer campaign. So I'm trying to keep my hair. I haven't gotten a haircut since like my birthday in January. I've trimmed the side, like my beard and stuff. But I'm going to see if I can make it all the way till this will be like, I think it's June 5th.
June 5th. Wow.
So it will be very dramatic. And probably the most dramatic I've ever done. But we'll see. I know no promises on that. But those you can check out how you can raise funds for that and get connected with Frank Says Hi over at franksayshi.com. Bill, it has been another hot minute. Is the Pop Culture Piledriver pause, as we like to call it right now. A lot of things have happened. Well, obviously, our main topic of the day, we'll be talking about Scott Hall. We'll get into that in a moment. Obviously, plenty of different things happen in both of our lives. Anything we should get caught up on, or the listener should know about you, since aside from the other things they've heard you on. But what else is cooking in your world?
We released the bracket for not PCP, this is PCP. For I've Heard It Both Ways, them Pineapple Boys, the 64 best Gus nicknames. I believe we'll be putting out some more votes today, so go check that out. And then, not really, just chilling.
There's an official Twitter for...
there is an official Twitter for I've Heard It Both Ways. I forgot. Yeah, we should have had it a long time ago. We were slacking, mainly me. But now it is up and it is running. So it would be great if you guys could go give us a follow. I was kind of hoping, a member of Psych would retweet our little poll, but they have their own podcast now, recapping episodes, so I don't think that'll ever happen.
Have you ever tweeted at all their Twitters?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not like collectively all of them, but individually, some of them grouped. But yeah, I mean... Also, I saw, and I can't believe all of the DSG missed this, the 64 best I Think You Should Leave sketches. That seems like a miss on collectively all of us.
I don't know, though. Like, here's my thing. I personally, there's so many brackets or so many things for us. I was like, I didn't feel like we really need to do one. And then I was thinking like Mac and Goo doing the cartoon, Dork doing the wrestler one, which, I talked to Keith about a little bit here and there. And then... you guys are doing on, the Gus nicknames. I don't think Change My Mind's not doing one, right? I'm not
I
missing.
don't believe so.
Yeah. So maybe I could see. I know what you mean, but I think, you know what? More content in the future, Bill. We just do it in May. I thought May Madness. Who cares about March Madness?
All right, I'm down.
We can figure that out. But yeah, it is obviously right now. It is the height of WrestleMania season, and unfortunately, we're recording this on March 22nd, 8 days ago, right as Raw was like kicking off. Unfortunately, the passing of Scott Hall came to light, came to the public. It was a really sad situation. And we talked about him in dribs and drabs in the history of this podcast.
Mhm.
And I think the most we really ever talked about him was in the top 11 IC champs.
Yeah,
which is
probably.
the dawn of the podcaster's dozen. Math is my strong suit, but my suit is not my strong suit, and neither is my preparing. Or I don't even know how to really go into how that happened, but we basically had like 12 dudes, or it was originally a top 10, then became a top 11 because I forgot Mr. Perfect.
Mhm.
Things
Ironic
happen.
in many ways.
It really is. And we'll kind of get into how Mr. Perfect intertwines in the early career of Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, at least in WWF. But, Bill, when you first saw the news, when you first heard, like, we've heard a lot of times about Scott Hall. Like, I think of all it's him and Ric Flair, I've heard the most, like, this is it. He's not going to make it, or he's in really bad condition. Like, when you first heard Scott Hall, bad condition, going to pass, what was that emotion like?
It was weird because I remember him from beginning to end in his run. I mean, I don't remember him as, big, mean, nasty Scott Hall from his original run in WCW. I know some of my friends do. But for me, he was the first guy as a kid. I remember Saturday mornings seeing the whole run-up of vignettes and him actually being good, delivering, and having a Hall of Fame career in front of my eyes. So it hurt. They all, anytime anybody passes, it hurts, especially somebody who you remember from your childhood. And it was just odd because, like you said, he's like the guy, him and Ric Flair, are like who's the guy from the Rolling Stones that we can't still believe?
Mick Jagger?
Not Mick Jagger.
The guitar. Why am I?
The guy who fell out of the tree. Not
Sorry.
Keith Moon.
It will come to me. Keith Richards. Keith Richards.
There you go. He's like the Keith Richards of wrestling. Like, there's been some sad videos of him showing up at that independent show and getting him to do the spin punch. And that guy was just a horrible person. So, like, you thought it was coming, and then he kind of rebounded, and DDP, helped save his life. So it was just really sad when you hear how he died. He broke his hip, and he was alone for several days on the floor, immobile. And then DDP did a wellness check and found him, and then had surgery, and I think he got a blood clot from it and had several what a way to go. I mean, poor guy. It seemed like he had really turned the corner and was, heading down the right path again.
I know. It is such a shame. Like, this is someone, and I'm saying this, and this is going to sound kind of callous or rude, but like, if I heard this like 12 years ago, I'd be like, damn, like, that's horrible. But like, it was just like substance abuse, drug issues, alcohol, all that. And we'll get into that as we go on. But, this man fought back. We saw him, in wrestling events. He showed up. He was a part of WrestleMania 32 for my first WrestleMania. There's a famous picture of him and at the time, Zack Ryder, now Matt Cardona is the real name, like backstage with the IC belt. And there's a famous photo of like when Razor was in Long Island with him holding the belt. Like, there's just like really strong moments. He had done appearances. He was at WrestleMania 31. He took part of that crazy Sting versus Triple H match at NWO. That kind of weird. The good back to go back now, but at the time I'm like, well, what is going on? But yeah, it really, to me, it stung. It was like the first one in a long time. Like, most of these guys, unfortunately, and we've all have passings in our life, but like, that was the first one. I was like, oh no, like, no, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, I wasn't particularly like sad, but it was emotional, and it just made me like really bummed me out. Like, all last Tuesday, I was just in the dumps a little bit. I'm like, and like all the outpouring of love, and that obviously picked you up a little bit because like people really cared for this guy.
Yeah, and a little bit like Ric Flair too. Ric Flair, I think, for a certain group of people, was the first cool bad guy where it was cool to be a bad guy. But he was not as popular for us. He wasn't as mainstream. He was more Southern, especially, when he was at the height of his powers. So for a lot of people, Razor Ramon was the first guy where it was cool to be a bad guy. And, when he did initially come out, I didn't like him because I don't know, 7 or
A
8,
child?
maybe 10. So when did he debut in WWE? Like 2000?
No, 92, 92, 91,
92.
92.
So I was
Yeah.
like 9. So I was
You were
still,
not 9 in 92.
yeah, I was born in 83.
Yeah, but in December. Like,
All right, I was 8. Either way, I didn't like him, because he was the bad guy. But then as you got a little bit older, and he quickly kind of turned face. It didn't take long because the crowd, like, he got a reaction every time he came out. And the thing I remember most about him is he was one of the first guys that like soaked in every moment in the ring. When he did, I know they tried to call it the Scott Hall, the over the head toss. What's called, the sack of shit. I think it's referred to as. Like if it was like a jobber or a guy he was beating the hell out of, he would throw him over his head. He'd sit up, smile, and do the clap one way, the clap the other way.
That's still, yeah.
And like everything he did in the ring, like his punch, it was a little over the top, but it was
The big
it was
step.
like it was big. It was like Roger Clemens throwing a pitch almost. It was just like a big wind up, but it looked great. And the other thing about him that I instantly think of, like you see the pictures of him in WCW, and he was a balloon of a man. Not like he was fat, but he was like gigantic.
Yeah.
He was like a bodybuilder, and obviously he was still huge in WWE, but his size kind of blended, I think, a little bit more in WWE because everybody was really big. But he was 6'7", like 285, and he moved like a gazelle.
Yeah, he was a hoss. Like that was the thing. I think that like when I first I've been watching, like looking back at some of the matches, we'll go kind of through his WWE early WCW run, because I'll be honest about one thing. I feel like the latter portion of his like television career with WCW, it's like, I don't know. WCW was just a disaster at one point. And obviously, he was, unfortunately, as well. But what you just said is so true. Like, I was watching some, like him versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 10, which obviously we're going to get into. There's a lot to get there. We'll dig into that in a few moments. But you look at the juxtaposition of the two. Obviously, I think that's what made those two, because they had two ladder matches, as we know. WrestleMania 10 and SummerSlam 95. And it's like, those are two, like, you look at their bodies. And like Shawn Michaels always, like, he was weird. Like he was supposed to be this transition. Like he's a smaller guy, but he's still not, like, he's got to be like
he's 6'1".
Yeah, 6'1", 6'2", and he looked good. It was proportionary too. He had like a long torso. Anyways, but when you see him in Razor, I think the ladder helped because they never did the nose to nose thing. Because if they did that, you would have seen that extreme, like 4+ inches that he had on him, like a whole head. But man, that was what made those matches special. I think that goes to Razor's points. And I'm watching him against like Jeff Jarrett, and you just see it's like he's a big dude,
like monsters,
big man. Right. Like when he was in the ring with Diesel during that feud, or he's in the ring with guys like that. Like just, I feel like even the enhancement talent they would get at the time were all probably 6'1" to 6'4".
Like the 1-2-3 kid, Sean Wallman, he was a pretty big kid too.
I was gonna say he's got to be over 6. Like he's probably around the Shawn Michaels height. Like I would guess, but he's still obviously in that when the first time they fought, which we'll get into in a minute as well.
6'1" too, yeah.
Yeah. So like nowadays, those guys are like my height, like 5'10". Like AJ Styles, I'm just guessing is like 5'10".
No, he's probably like 6'3". He's a big dude.
No, there's no 6'3".
Right, we'll find out right now. He's 5'11". He's 5'11".
Yeah. So that means 5'9".
Yeah.
But did you kind of, get into this whole, his career? Obviously there's some extreme highlights, just, as you mentioned, Bill, the vignette started everything off, I think, when it comes to a massive audience. He was obviously in AWA, WCW. He was the Diamond Stud. That's where a lot of his moves, I think it wasn't called the Diamond Cutter, but I think it was like the Diamond Edge was what now is, or became the Razor's Edge. But funny,
a little bit like Sheamus with his moveset. At the time, he had the complete moveset. He had like all the Bret Hart moves. He had the Russian leg sweep. He had the inverted atomic drop. Like he could do a little bit of everything. And his matches were, I'd say a little Sheamus-esque where they just had a flow to them.
I was trying to come up with who is the guy that most relates to like a Razor Ramon. Obviously, Razor Ramon. I think it is. Obviously there's Damian Priest, who's like a newer guy, but he's kind of like trying to be Razor Ramon, which is fine and agree. But like, I think it is Sheamus because like Sheamus obviously he's a multi-time world champion, but you're not really looking at him like a world champion. He's kind of been that.
He's a transitional champion usually.
Yeah. And he was like a top, like there was the one shot he had there at WrestleMania 28 after beating Daniel Bryan where he gave him like a real face run. But like, he's really always been like an upper mid-carder. I think he's like, as noticeable as any wrestler there is today. Like, I think people know because he's been around. He was through the John Cena era to the modern era. He looks good. He's always had a cool look. So I think there's
very
something
colorful. He's a very colorful character, much like Razor was. Had that kind of unbelievably hot start. And I know that Razor never won the WWE title like in his first run when he was there, but at the time, the Intercontinental title picture was, if not, it was always a better wrestled match. Like, that's where the top wrestling talent was at the time, and especially when Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels were competing for it. Like, that was, to me, my favorite stuff to watch usually.
Yeah, because I think what they did, and by the time he was IC champ, like, they made that transition though as a post Hogan. But like, I know what you mean. Like, the thing with the IC title just meant a lot more. Like, it was equally interesting, at least you could say, to the world title, especially at that time. But as we can get into it here, so the vignettes went for about like 3 months.
Oh, crazy.
Which were just awesome. You could watch them today and you'd be like, why do we not get more of this? Like, this is so good. And it's funny. And obviously people at the time probably thought this is a joke. This guy's a complete crock. But the reason is he kind of adapted. He went from just Scott Hall to adapting the Scarface. They went into, obviously all of his catchphrases, and that's where the character Razor Ramon came from. The vignettes. Then he actually debuted, and this is a funny fact. I looked this up. He debuted against Carmella's dad.
Yeah, I saw that. Somebody tweeted it out.
Yeah, Paul Van Dale on Superstar. So that was, and this is another thing. I think this is why Razor Ramon, to us, being at that time frame, like 8-9 years old, is so vital, because we watched him on vignettes. Then you saw him debut on those, like, even if it was today, like Monday Night Raw or whatever, but he was facing like punching bags, jobbers, enhancement talent, whatever you want to call them, for like a few months. So it really built up the move set. You got to know his things. That's a big issue I see in wrestling today. It's like you debut a guy and he's just beating a guy that you drop down the card, which is foolish, because then it's like you're not really establishing it. Or if it's like a competitive match, like, I don't want that.
The last guy I really remember getting jobber matches to build him was post Wyatt family Strowman.
Strowman did it. They're doing it with a guy almost now a little bit. They did it really well with Ryback back in the day. He might have been the best example. He did like 4 months of just beating dudes. But yeah, so that's where obviously we get Razor Ramon. Now here's where it's really funny. I was looking at this and I did a bunch of research in a 38-minute time span last night, Bill. The Ultimate Warrior basically shifted a lot of things when it came to Razor Ramon. What I mean by that, so the Ultimate Warrior was originally supposed to be in that 92 or 91 Survivor Series. It was supposed to be Ric Flair and Ric Flair and Razor Ramon versus Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior. Then at Royal Rumble, it was supposed to be Bret Hart versus the Ultimate Warrior, which would have been a great way to really make Bret Hart like a huge next level champion. Ultimate Warrior quits the company at that SummerSlam around there, or in between, hold him up for money, whatever happened. So Ric Flair, Razor Ramon versus Macho Man and Mr. Perfect, who comes off his Lloyds of London deal, which that was a whole thing. They have their match. Then at the Royal Rumble, they kind of hotshot Razor into that title match versus Bret Hart, which, again, if you go back, what a really well done early in his, like, because he was never known as a technical wrestler, especially at this point. Bret Hart could carry a match with anybody. It's like Kota Ibushi versus a blow-up doll. But that was a really excellent match between
I even think Scott Hall was injured in that match, too. Like, he was playing on, like, some sort of injury. I remember that from, like, a Bruce Pritchard podcast.
Makes sense. Honestly, like, especially those days, like, those guys were traveling across the world all the time. That's another thing that's really fascinating. He had his WrestleMania debut against Bob Backlund in I still think WrestleMania 9 is one of the most odd WrestleManias of all time.
Is that the Vegas outdoor one?
Yes. I love that part of it. I just feel like that card is bizarre as hell. You have just the most random match.
Giant Gonzalez versus Undertaker, Tatanka, I believe, versus Shawn Michaels is the opening match.
Yeah, which was originally supposed to be Marty Jannetty versus Shawn Michaels, but Jannetty also with a guy with a lot of demons, we could just say.
Yeah, Hogan wins the title after Bret Hart loses the title to Yokozuna.
Very
wild.
Yeah. So as you mentioned earlier, like, he was a cool character. People started to recognize that. So then when Raw started to, like, become a bigger show, it was, him versus the Kid, and that's when the famous moonsault to the 1-2-3. Razor Ramon gets PO'd. The Kid runs out. He becomes the 1-2-3 Kid. They kind of have an ongoing little feud for a few months. And then who gets thrown into it? Ted DiBiase. Would you say Ted DiBiase a top 10 heel of all time?
I would say top 3.
So how do you make somebody a babyface that was a heel? Get a guy with bigger heat. So DiBiase enters it, basically calling like Ramon a joke. I think the 1-2-3 Kid beat Ted DiBiase on one. As well.
Just real quickly on that 1-2-3 Kid thing, that's one of my most vivid memories of wrestling as a kid, 100%, because I thought, Razor was the man. 1-2-3 Kid kind of had the gimmick where they were changing his name every week, and that was even a joke in the match. And he goes to, he's beating the crap out of him. He's doing the sack of shit, throwing him over the head, just punching this, like just beating the crap out of this kid. And then he hits him with the moonsault out of nowhere. And Scott Hall does one of the greatest sells on it of all time. Gets up, can't believe it. Then they have the match for $10,000, which is an amazing match because he's like, nobody beats the bad guy. He comes in, does it again, takes the money, runs, gets out of the building, like pulls off in a car. Like that was, to me as a kid, like at that point I knew wrestling was fake, but I was like, that was awesome. And it gives you that like little sense of like, is it real? Is it not real? Like that to me was one of the best things as a kid in professional wrestling. It was in that whatever the United Center, whatever that little arena they always had Raw in. It was awesome.
With the ICO Pro banners. Gotta get me some of that. But yeah, that was just, and again, great storytelling. Razor was involved with it. And again, nowhere near any main events, nowhere near even mid-card titles, just a great middling feud. Again, then goes into the feud with the $1 Million Man. They have their blow off. I think DiBiase's last actual wrestling match in WWF against Razor Ramon at that year's SummerSlam. And then we start to turn things up. This is when, Shawn Michaels does what he always does, just tosses belts to the side because he doesn't want to lose them. So Razor is in the IC tournament, eventually goes to the finals. And I remember this match too. It was him versus Rick Martel. And
great match.
I loved Rick Martel as a kid because I hated him, right? Like he was another one of those guys that like I despised. He was arrogance. He was a great heel. And yeah, exactly. And that was still a weird feud, but a great match or a great story. But here he is. And I actually thought like, oh, they're going to probably go Rick Martel. Just I remember in my head being like, Razor Ramon's not like a title guy. Wins his first IC title. What does this lead to? The return of Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 10, 2 belts go up, first ever WWF televised, don't ask Bret Hart, televised ladder match. And it is for I guess you could say like the rightful owner. And we've seen this so many times since.
Yeah, real champ, fake champ.
Yeah, both IC title belt, like very cool story here. And this belt at WrestleMania 10, we both like, it's so watchable. They do an amazing match. I did not know this. It is the first 5-star match in the history of WWF from Dave Meltzer.
Oh, wow. Not even
so that ladder match. So whatever people think of that, but that's still a pretty cool, like,
oh yeah.
No, and it's between Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon. This is like, obviously you had Bulldog versus Bret Hart already had happened, which I just assumed was a 5-star match. It was not. Earlier in the night, you had Owen versus Bret, which I thought
I would have thought, yeah,
was a 5-star match, but again, it was like 4 and 7, whatever. But
was he ranking matches at the time of Macho Man Steamboat?
I don't believe so. That's a good point, but I know that.
I mean, that match is, I think, a little bit overhyped. It's just a bunch of falsies, but they're great wrestlers. But it's not of the, Mac makes this point about movie making and all that kind of stuff. Like wrestling evolved even in that like 10-year period, and then after that, it evolved even crazier.
I would suggest people watch Macho vs. Steamboat if you have the time. If you can search through the horrible searchability of the Peacock Network. But it really feels more of like a match you would have seen in the last 10 years than you would have seen in the previous 20 years. So, or maybe the last like 18 years since like 1920 WrestleManias. But then like that's what I think why it got so much hype back then, because there was nothing like it. It was like pinfall, crazy moves, pinfall. Like it was really good. And it was
also they never usually put Steamboat versus Macho Man. It was usually those guys fighting someone to make somebody else look better.
Correct. So going back to this, this match, dude, had it all. Shawn Michaels, this was a star-making.
Even the entrances, both of their entrances are iconic.
Okay, so we got to stop down on the coolness of Scott Hall and Razor Ramon.
It's amazing. As he says, he oozes machismo.
So yeah, oozes machismo. The toothpick,
the bad guy,
the bad guy. Everything about him was awesome. But this entrance, when he slowly creeps under the ladder and turns, it is a great gif. That's to this day. It is just awesome to watch. Like Shawn Michaels does the little he almost like he's a receiver trying to outdo a cornerback to go around it. The entry obviously is at Madison Square Garden, which makes obviously the iconicness kind of raise a little bit. But man, that entrance when Scott goes under there, awesome. And then also the Razor's Edge, like from the ladder, just awesome spot.
Yep. And the other quick things about Scott Hall and what made him so cool, you go and watch his entrance. From the moment he steps out, he's got a little something in almost every step that he does. Whether right when he comes out, he does like the hands to the side, or like as he's walking down, he flicks a little bit of the hair. He'll flick the toothpick at you. Gets in the ring. He has a bunch of little like idiosyncrasies when he gets in the ring too. It's like he goes like puts his fists up and like punch like just like kind of like stomps on the ground and then puts his arms straight out. Like everything about him was. Like, look at me from the set. Like, once he walked, like, by the time he got into the ring, you're like, all right, this guy's the man. He doesn't even need to do anything.
They always say Randy Orton, no wasted motion. I'm not going to put Scott Hall in that category, but everything he did, especially during this era, even like when he came in, when he became and the sparklers behind him, like all those little things, like the package was so damn good, and he was so good at buying fully into this character and in a way maybe becoming this guy. After his ladder match with Michaels, he went into a feud with Diesel. This we talked about, like with that height. That's when you realize, like, oh, because Diesel debuts and you're like, this dude's a giant. And then you're like, well, Scott Hall's like almost at his nose. Like, wait a second. And so that goes in. He goes into that feud as the IC champ, loses the belt to Jarrett at the Rumble. Has a rematch with Jarrett. Another weird WrestleMania is 11. Kind of like oddly incredible what happens in there. But he actually technically beats him. This is a Road Dogg debut era. So there's a DQ. Gets the rematch versus Shawn Michaels, Bill, at that year's SummerSlam. Again, this is the and if you've listened to Richard podcast, you know about
they're not allowed to use the ladder as a weapon.
They were no and they find that out I think it was like not moments before, but like day of that match.
Morning of, like how everything happens in the WWE. Like, hey, you know what? We can't use the ladder as a weapon. All right. That's a great match.
It really, some people debate it's better because of that, because they never use the ladder as a weapon. So it's really a match, but then the structure of the match is to get to the top, right? So like there's a different nuance to it where the first one, they're like using the ladder as a weapon. They're bumping Shawn Michaels is bumping like a maniac on that ladder at 10. 10 is the best.
Oh yeah,
the original will always beat the sequel, I believe, in most cases. But this is a great match, and it gets it's like 4 3/4 stars, so it's almost a 5-star match.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with usually the original is a little bit better. I mean, and I think of the iconic matches that have had great rematches, like Stone Cold versus Bret Hart. I actually like the Survivor Series match way better than his WrestleMania match.
It's the match that WrestleMania
which has a cooler ending in WrestleMania.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. The aura of it, the double turn, Shamrock, the blood. But yeah, that Survivor Series match is incredible. And then this is where like things kind of get, the end of Razor's run. And I think this is another thing that's special about Razor, Bill, is that he only really had about a 4-year run in WWF. So I always think the shorter the run in a way is more
Stone Cold.
We've many times. But he basically,
what is it? If you're around long enough, you whatever the Batman quote is, you become
the villain. You become the villain, or you become stale. And
that's basically what I was. Yeah,
we talked about Sheamus earlier, and I love Sheamus, but his career, and it's just inconsistent storytelling. No one's caring for Sheamus. Like back in these days, there was only like really 20 wrestlers that are like worthy of stories, because there was a lot of jobbers or guys that are like really being built for the future. So it was, I don't want to say easy. And there was 2-3 hours of programming a week, including your house shows that nobody, that people actually went to. But here's the thing. Razor actually set the record when he beat Dean Douglas for a 4th time being an IC champ in 1996. So there was a huge push for him there. That was a record-setting moment. I remember that being talked about because that's when Shawn basically gave Dean Douglas. So Dean Douglas was technically an IC champ for like an hour. And then he had that brief feud with Goldust, and there's a lot of behind the story scenes there because that's the famous kiss. And then he was like, I ain't doing this. I ain't into that. I'm quoting something here. He said, I ain't into that girly-ish.
Yep.
So who did they segue it to? Ahmed Johnson, which there's a whole other backstory of Ahmed Johnson and his wild history. But yeah, so he originally was supposed to be at WrestleMania 12. We got that Hollywood Backlot Brawl. It was supposed to be Razor versus Goldust, which I think would have been a really nice match, like a incredible story there. But Razor says, So he tells Vince, I'm leaving. Roddy comes in for that match, and Razor is never seen on television again. He basically just like done. As soon as he said that, he was, I'm out. And Vince and booking just said, we'll take him off. We'll let him do house shows, go job. I think he lost to Goldust on a run. And then it comes down to Bill, the famous curtain call.
Yeah, I mean, I was Madison Square Garden. That's when I believe him and was it Scott Hall? Kevin Nash were leaving the company. They broke character. Everybody got pissed. I think Triple H got his run. Like he was supposed to win King of the Ring that year, right? And they made him job out.
Yeah, so Shawn Michaels faces Diesel in the main event cage match. Earlier in the night, Triple H, or Hunter Hearst Helmsley at the time, fought Scott Hall. So they both like booked their way to face each other. That's how they wanted to go. The famous story is, can we do this? Vince wasn't there. They got the approval to go out. They're all hugging. You know what's random? There's so many videos that you would be like, oh, you'll never see that. You'll never see that. Somehow this footage, it's not clear in any way, obviously. It was
no,
like,
but I've seen the footage, yeah.
We've all seen it, but like there's so many things that you just never, some things I don't want to see, I'll be honest, but like we're just talking reality here, Bill. In the era of, this was 1996. People were filming somehow on a camcorder. Like, it's just wild that there isn't more stuff like this. But yeah, that's famous. That got out. People say to this day, Jim Cornette believes it's the breaking of kayfabe. That was the death of
pretty
kayfabe
much
at that moment.
But even, everybody knew it was fake. At that point, in 96, everyone knew it was fake.
Yeah. But it was just like you don't see things like that where faces and heels are hugging and clapping.
They still kept up the kayfabe. But,
yes,
if you watch all those documentaries, like the secret was out, like, what's his name already got punched in the face by the Wild Man there.
Oh, yes. I thought you were talking about even like Shawn Michaels when he got attacked and like they were in the car with Bulldog.
Oh, yeah.
That was another one. Shawn Michaels is always somehow involved. He was a big problem. But that basically changed the game. So then, Bill, a few weeks later, I know for a fact I didn't watch a lot of WCW. I watched the first hour of WCW, then I'd watch Raw. That was my like viewing habit.
Oh, yeah, that was everybody's.
Especially in the later years. But for me, I didn't know Scott Hall debuted. I just remember a classmate of mine saying, hey, did you see Razor Ramon was on Nitro or something like that? And I'm like, no, he wasn't. Like, he's in WWE. Like, you didn't think like that as a kid. And that's the famous when he hops the barrier during a match, by the way, which is really hilarious. You know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. Famous promo that basically set the wrestling world, the business side of wrestling, ablaze. And that's when everything shifted. That's when WCW became must watch because like, what is happening? There's a lawsuit.
The original invasion.
Yeah. And there was the lawsuit by WWF saying he's looked because he had the little seemed like, I don't know.
Oh my God. That's another thing. Yeah. The little almost like a flavor saver for your forehead.
That's a good way to put it. And they basically were saying, hey, he's playing Razor Ramon. He's not, even though he didn't even say his name at this point. And that's when they decided to go with their real name, Scott Hall. Kevin Nash debuts 3 weeks later. And they were.
And we get fake Razor. That's fake.
Then WWF has the idea to go, well, we own the IP of these characters. So let's debut a new Razor Ramon and a new Diesel. And as a kid, I knew something, like, I'm telling you, maybe I wasn't the most intelligent kid. You can joke about it.
We were too old. We were in middle school.
I was 11 years old. And I remember being like, that's not him, but is it him? Like, I just remember, like, Bill, first time, the very first, the Diesel one, I'll be honest, thought it was him. With the glasses. Really? I was like, yeah, when you first, I'm impressionable mind. I'm an idiot, just a kid. But like then I remember once Razor Ramon took off.
Oh, he's fat.
And he was just like what I probably look like now. Like a little bit of that. Like, no, his body was like weird. He was like full fat. Like I have like melty ice cream fat. Like it's trying to go away, but it just won't. This dude was just like plump. Rick Bogner, I believe.
Thick.
Yeah, he was. And then I'm like, that's not him. And then he spoke and I'm like, nope. And then when they went to Diesel, he spoke and I'm like, what is happening? And Jim Ross was like a heel. It was really weird. Horrible idea. But the bonus to Scott Hall does him. Guy made like another $1 million.
Really?
Talked about in a shoot because they re-up because WCW also thought that they were going back because it was a tease. Like Jim Ross was like, I got Razor Ramon and Diesel come back next week. So then WCW went to them and like, hey, here's more money. You're not going anywhere. And they're like, what do you mean?
Man, WCW's morons then. Jesus.
Well, clearly.
I mean, they paid everybody way too much money. I think people were still collecting like years after. That's
Oh,
why
so
like Kevin Nash didn't come back for like 4 years.
yeah, it was a year. It was almost a year, almost a year because he let his full contract run out.
But yeah, they paid
It
him
was
like Bobby
Goldberg.
Bonilla money.
Phil, Goldberg collected. They went down the week before WrestleMania 2001. Goldberg debuted the night after WrestleMania 19 in 2003. He collected for 2 years.
Unreal.
It really is. But anyway, so that obviously starts off the Bash at the Beach. Then obviously this is when things really get dark for Scott Hall because this is where the personal demons come out. This is when his alcohol, they play it into his character at one point, which is really like sad. You can Google that.
Oh, yeah, they're like in
like,
WWE too.
No, well, WWE did later,
Yeah.
but this is like, not to say that was right, but this is like in the height of him, like all of his friends kind of been like, hey, we got to get through this. And then like they use it as a story, which I like blending some reality, but this is where it's like, no, this dude's
Too much.
You got to get this guy out of here. And unfortunately, like he got divorced from his wife, which is a random story. He divorced his wife. They got remarried, then divorced again.
Yeah, I saw that on Wikipedia.
Yeah. So Bill, listen, if you can play one, you want to yo-yo that, I think it's just one and done. But yeah, this is where like obviously the alcoholism, all these issues. And I actually watched an interview with him. And I thought a lot about like, I guess us in a sense, like our friends and stuff. Now, people can partake in whatever you want. Some people used to call it the devil's, what do people call weed? The devil's
grass?
All right, devil's grass. Now people call it God's grass because I think people have come to realize that it's actually natural from the earth. And there's a lot worse things out there, right? Mm-hmm. So Scott Hall recently was talking, this might have been a few years ago, talking about his demons. And he says, wrestlers today, he's like kids today, he's like when are playing video games, right? And that's become like a weird criticism, like the Undertaker criticized people. But Scott Hall said it this way, and I found it interesting thinking of like our generation to a degree, because he's obviously older than us, died at 63. He said when he was a kid, there was Pong. It was a doot, kind of like a boring game. Yep. He's like 10, 20 years later, there's like Mario, there's, well, not that much later, but you know what I mean? There's Mario, yeah. Then becomes like N64, all that. And he's like, these are like very interesting and fun things. Like when we're the boys in the back, all we did was pop pills, drink alcohol, take drugs. That's all there was to do. He like now these people, like he's like wrestlers in just entertainment. Like when you're done, instead of like abusing pills because your body hurts, you can like go on a very nice, relaxing chair and play video games. Yeah. He's like, those guys aren't going to die like or get in the issues we do. Where the Undertaker, it's funny, he's like, oh, these kids don't know. They're not in bar fights. They're playing video games. Like, yeah, dude, look at your generation. They're all dead.
Yeah. So Adam Cole's there, just streaming, playing video games, and same thing with Xavier Woods and all them. Like that's huge in the wrestling community. But like, yeah, I mean, not really an excuse, but I can see kind of his point. Like it's a nice way to unwind, and now weed I think is legal in most places. So
just think about
a better alternative than what he was probably doing at the time.
Let's say we can't compare, but like let's say you go an hour, one of your hard workouts. When you're done with that, there's so many things you can do in your car, listening to things, all these things to kind of like unwind and whatever. When you get back, you can, whatever it is. I don't care. Judge, you know what you do to unwind, or if you have like a physically beaten day or a mentally beaten day. This dude, these guys, and he said it. He's like, I would get to my car, open
a book.
Yeah, that's true. But he just like there would just be pills ready for him all the time, and drugs and alcohol, and he would take all these pills, then go out to drink with the boys. He's like, it was obviously an awful lifestyle, and that's obviously something.
I mean, that was the lifestyle that they kind of all lived, though. That was like the life of a professional wrestler. It was before, I think DDP was one of the first guys who like took care of himself post matches. People would make fun of him for packing on ice after. Each
his neck,
or covering his knees, looking like old school NBA player on the bench there. But it obviously worked, and it's one of those things where it's super sad because that was kind of just like the lifestyle you fell into as a professional wrestler, because they didn't have like the healthcare, like they just popped a pill and to make their next town and make their next check. So it was a vicious lifestyle.
And the scariest part is we were kids, and like we would have these guys are like large, these are real life superheroes to us. And little do we know, like all these guys had all these like severe issues. It's just so scary and messed up. And obviously we lost a lot of wrestlers from that. I think it's WrestleMania 7 at this point. There's like 3 or 4 people still alive.
Oh, this entire match is gone.
Oh, and I think it's like multiple parts of the card at this point. It's like Hogan's one of the few. Hogan, Sid, Ric Flair. Like the only ones that come to mind off the top of my head. Was Michaels on that card? Brett,
7, maybe.
Brett was, but still, it's like maybe 40% are alive. It's there's more dead than alive, I believe.
Sergeant Slaughter still around?
Sergeant Slaughter is still with us.
Wow, that's crazy.
But yeah, it was. But then obviously Scott Hall, he had his WCW run, never became a world champion there either. And talked about, I actually found an interview too where he talked about, he's like, I never cared. He's like, I never cared about being the world champion. He was obviously, him and Nash went on the large run. Obviously, Bash at the Beach, we didn't really have to get into, but they changed the game. NWO debuts. He has a lot. I think he was like, we'll get into his highlights in a minute for belts, but he was tag champs like all the time. But then they did like the Wolfpack, and that's when I couldn't even tell you what happened with him at that point, because that's when
I never was huge into WCW. I was a lot like you. I would eventually, click over towards the end of it. Commercial breaks, watch the first hour, which was the best anyways, because that's where they put the real wrestling on. They put like the cruiserweights. But I don't remember too much of Scott Hall in WCW because I wasn't just a WCW guy. I remember like seeing some of the promos. Like there's no match that ever really stuck out for me with Scott Hall there. The only thing that I really remember is when they throw the soda off his head and he reacts to it and just kind of shrugs it off. That's one of the most iconic moments he's ever had in WCW. And like that's all I kind of really remember because WCW,
that's amazing.
It was
is the and I think somebody tweeted about it, like the epitome of
hair's
cool.
perfect.
He literally, like Bischoff, all them are in the ring. They throw a can or like a cup of water or beer, hits him all over him. Just looks, kind of swabs his hair back, and then kind of like cockily, like intimidates the crowd. Like you don't get that today. It's just people shouldn't be throwing things, but. With that being said, like it's just a whole different world. Like amazing. The guy was probably out of his mind too, unfortunately. Yeah. But just amazing stuff. Then obviously return to WWE when they do the NWO in 2002. Like here's a question though. You get to rewrite, ready? So obviously this is a weird thing because Vince McMahon never used the IP of other people. Like he had Ramon, he had Diesel, he had Hulk Hogan, but yet he made them Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and not Hulk Hogan, Hollywood Hulk Hogan. But would you have gone NWO bringing all those guys back, or would you have brought them back as Razor, Diesel, and then just Hulk Hogan?
No, because at that point they were known as that, and you would wave bye-bye to the cartoony, gimmicky days of WWE, and it was still in that kind of early 2000s invasion type angle almost. So I think it was fine, and plus Scott Hall and Razor Ramon, I mean. They were kind of the same guy. Like he basically did a little less of the Tony Montana thing, but same look, same outfit, same weight of the ring. Like everything he did was pretty much the same. Diesel was completely different. Because I just thought he was I never ever liked Kevin Nash. I always thought he sucked. I was never into him. But
the only thing about him sucked, Bill, with those knees.
Yeah. Oh my God, he's got knees like I do.
Quads, knees.
And then Hogan, same thing. Like at that point, he was, that was his look. I mean, he slowly went back. So
I was gonna say 3 months, the night after WrestleMania, everything went right back. But coming in, it's just weird. It's almost like WWE. What it looks like to me, and obviously I've listened to tons of podcasts from Jim Ross talking about Pritchard and all these guys, but it's almost like they really did want to go with like Razor, Diesel, Hulk. But like they went with the NWO thing because like bringing them in as a package, they thought would be cooler. Obviously the WrestleMania stuff, they thought they'd have longer feuds. They thought they'd eventually get to Hogan versus Austin. A lot of reasons that didn't happen. But it's really funny to look back because then like the night after WrestleMania, everything just changed. Hulk Hogan's old Hulk Hogan again. Then you just left those two out to like dry because Kevin Nash wasn't healthy enough. Scott Hall clearly wasn't. He was physically healthy, just wasn't healthy enough to really perform. They redo the NWO. That's when they got like Shawn Michaels, Booker T, X-Pac. It was just a bizarre situation. But Scott Hall gets a match against Stone Cold at WrestleMania, which should be awesome. Like when you think about the ending is awesome.
Oh, it's one of the greatest sells in the history of professional wrestling.
He's right. I think because he looks. What is the name of the move, Bill?
What, the sack of shit?
No. Stone Cold's finisher.
Oh, the stunner.
He literally looks stunned.
Yeah.
He
stuns him twice.
Yeah.
He gives him one and he kind of like flips up. And then the second one, he like it's like an eject button was like hit, like it's like he bound, like it's just it's The Rock sells it a little too much for me, where he like
Oh yeah.
kicks off with his hands and like shoots straight up in the air. But this was just like, and I think somebody's done the edit where like he like hits the stunner, he jumps and he like goes out of the fucking arena. Like it is an
Yes.
amazing. It's probably that and the Shane McMahon drinking the beer, the greatest sell of a stunner of all time.
Yes. It's funny you say that, Bill, because you know what famous video there is of Scott Hall taking that stunner is then he goes into that weird oblivion and that music that got you kicked off of Twitter. Hey, easy, don't get us kicked off. But like that literally is one of the videos that was very famous with like a few years ago now. But yeah, so that obviously, and then that ended poorly because you did mention storyline, right? So at one point, Stone Cold ties up Scott Hall and puts him in like a freezer and then pours real beer like in his mouth and stuff. And Stone Cold at the time and in his book claims he didn't know, but everybody knew. People hated Scott Hall. There's no doubt.
He had that thing in his mouth, right, where like it would react to alcohol because he couldn't drink it because he
basically was taking. He was on like a medication, had like a system. I think implant. Don't quote me on this, but there's something he was taking or implanted that if he had alcohol, he immedially would puke.
Yeah, but like blood, right?
I don't know all it's very bad for him. Like he already been to like rehab like several times. And so Stone Cold said he didn't know, and there's so many stories of like, as soon as those guys all got signed, everyone's like, we got to rally against them. Like they're a bunch of a-holes. Hogan, Nash. Don't forget, Nash was a booker at WCW. Hogan has politics his whole career. And Scott Hall, I guess, was kind of looked at as their kind of like lap boy in a sense. Like, he just kind of goes along with the crowd. So there was a lot of heat there. Honestly, I think that WrestleMania match is one of his final like few matches. He did a bunch of tag matches on Raw as I was looking, and then just done. And that was a sad ending of his like popularity. Then he obviously did a ECW earlier, and then you mentioned this TNA run with his son, and just bloated. And then he did an indie show not too long after that, and that was I think the famous like just horrible. Like these things should not be seen.
No, and it does give like you live long enough, you'll be the villain. Like you live long enough in wrestling, you'll get super stale. And he didn't do that in his first WWF run, whatever you want to call it. And then even his WCW run, but I mean, everybody gets stale once they switch to Wolfpack. I don't even understand half of that stuff. Great theme, but I remember one time we came home from, I believe, Foxwoods, where our friend played that for the entire 2.5-hour ride, and it was awful. But
how many sugars did he used to get in his coffees?
8, I think, and like a medium.
It was bad. It was bad.
But either way, like he kind of, if he didn't have all that other stuff, you would think of him. I think you still think of him as one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. I think he's about to lose to Ric Flair in the dork pole as a 7 seed to a 2. But he is one of the most iconic guys because he is exactly that. He is an icon. Like just like the video's playing over my shoulder now. Like he is, you remember everything about this guy. You remember matches, you remember looks, you remember promos, you remember catchphrases. Like he just personified to me what a WWE superstar was as a kid. He was larger than life. He backed it up, and everything about him was just memorable, cool, like whatever you want to call it. He was one of the all-time great. And he was kind of a character, right? He was a caricature.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really what comes. Like he was the total package, and not Lex Luger. Like the promos, the in-ring, like the moments. And I think what happened over time, like we said, his 4-year run in WWE, like I didn't even like I was spitting things off the top of my head what I remember looking at a few different things. There's much more, obviously, if we went week to week, but he was like his growth into the character, vignettes, beating enhancement talent for a few months, getting placed into a feud he probably wasn't really ready for. But you want to put a guy, like you say, how do you become a main eventer?
Put him in the main event.
Put him in the main event. You put him with the champion of Ric Flair versus, or I think, Ric Flair was a champion at the time, and then Macho Man, and then in the ring with them. And obviously, he was supposed to be Ultimate Warrior in there. Then, due to circumstance, he's in the main event in his first Royal Rumble against the champion of Bret Hart. That sets a tone. That sets like, hey, this guy's on the trajectory to go there. So I agree with you. I think that's why he'll always be one of the coolest. It's hard to replicate. Like WWE's been trying to do it for years with guys like Finn Balor, who I actually think can be cool, but like they like make him cool. They say things that make him not cool. Like commentary was different. Also, you had guys like Like, and then you had guys like Damian Priest they're doing things with now, or even like Seth Rollins. Like, people have like cool goes up and down. It's like, don't try to be cool. If you're cool, you're cool kind of thing. And that's what I liked about Razor. Very organically cool.
He's believable.
He is. And that was the thing. He felt like Razor Ramon, or Scott Hall felt like he was that large in life, and that was who you would get off of the camera as well. And then we have to say this. So obviously, unfortunately, we know he passed, but he did get clean for a while. He worked with DDP.
I think he was clean like at the end there.
Yeah,
right?
for years. But like it took a lot, and he talked about it. Like Diamond Dallas Page, like basically dragged his butt to get to the point of health, and like he never would have done that. He saw what was going on with Jake the Snake, which you can see in the resurrection of Jake the Snake in the documentary. And Scott Hall was like, all right, I'm in. Let's do this. And he bought into DDP, his mentality, his positivity, and obviously cleaned him up for years. Which was awesome. Bill, I just want to go quickly over some of his like highlights. So Wrestling Illustrated gave him Match of the Year versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 10. He was the most improved wrestler in 1992, which that's like, I think one of the best things to get. Like, forget about being the wrestler, like to go from like, we think you kind of suck to like, whoa, wow, this guy's the real deal. Number 7 top 500 wrestlers in the PW 594, ranked 72 in 2003. I don't know how he got on the 72. No. For that run, 40 and 98 in the top 100 tag teams of all time, with Kevin Nash, one with Kurt Hennig. That was in his early days. The real ones that you're going to remember here, he was the television champ in WCW, United States champ 2 times, WCW tag champ 7 times, 6 of those with Kevin Nash. It says World War III 97. I didn't even look this up. He won World War III. Is that like, sure. In WWF, he was the Intercontinental Champ, as we mentioned, 4 times, which was a record setting. He was a 2-time Slammy Award winner, Bill, the most important stuff. Match of the Year twice against Shawn Michaels, once in 94, once in 96. Wasn't that 95? Wrestling Observer gave him the Match of the Year versus Shawn Michaels. Best gimmick in 96 with the New World Order. And unfortunately, he was part of the most disgusting promotional tactic in 98, exploiting his alcoholism. But as maybe the most important, he's a 2-time Hall of Famer. Individually as Razor Ramon in 2014, and then in 2020, part of the NWO.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of, if not the coolest characters that ever lived. He's up there with the greatest gimmicks of all time. Not really, I mean, Scott Hall, whatever, in WCW, but Razor Ramon in WWF is up there with The Undertaker as like, I mean, I think he's really like kind of his character turned up to 11 is what they always say. That's what Bruce Pritchard says. Like, Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, he kind of blurred the lines a little bit there to make himself a little more larger than life. But I think that's like, if you sat down and talked to Scott Hall, he might not say, hey, yo, but he would be pretty boisterous, have a lot of bravado, just ooze that, coolness. And I think that's what stands out to me is like, he's not Duke the Dumpster Drosy. He's not trying to be anything he's not. He fits. He
does. And I always thought he would be one of those guys that would be like a promo guy for somebody, or like he would come back and be like a manager of some sort. Obviously, there's many reasons why that didn't happen, but we'll miss Scott Hall. Incredible career. Hopefully we did somewhat justice, or at least painted the picture of our thoughts on him. You can always tweet at us at Pop Culture PD, at Billy Yee 2411, at Jason D Rossi, and let us know your thoughts on Scott Hall.
Oh yeah, I'll be out on my mind, though.
We'll make it quick here, Bill. I got to let you know 2 things. Worst Roommate Ever, very fun watch on Netflix.
I did watch it. I will say, though, about it, I feel terrible for everything that happened to these people, but I'm not going to an abandoned place looking for a golden toilet seat with a guy I don't know and I already think's pretty shady. I mean, she didn't deserve anything that happened to her. 100% not victim shaming here. Like, you want to go do that. But like, people, be a little bit smarter. I mean, and I've had roommates, and you can get surprised with a shit bag out of nowhere. But some of these people, it's like, don't give them like your life savings and just leave it there with this is
yeah, it's brutal. Watch it on Netflix. It's quick, digestible. Every episode's a different one, but yeah, it's disturbing and a little more effed up. But you said, yeah, sometimes you got to be a little more cautious. But these people also are honest people, so that's one thing. Also, a movie I want you to watch on HBO, Freaky. Vince Vaughn. It's like Freaky Friday, but it's like a horror movie, but it's not. I absolutely adored it. Finally watched it. It took me like 3 years to finally watch this damn movie. But Vince Vaughn,
Peacemaker yet?
Vince Vaughn switches bodies with a teenage girl. Bill, my life is in shambles. But one thing we both have to agree on, Bill, hurdles change your life.
I mean, I thought I was going to go at least getting every single one right forever.
Yeah.
And today I'm back on the horse, but yesterday, I don't even know what the fuck the song was.
I still don't know what it is, Bill.
No
I didn't
clue.
know that one. I will tell everybody it is just like Wordle. If you don't know about it, it's Hurdle, but it's music. You get the 6 guesses. If you know anything about I never played Wordle till we started our little chat there or text chain. But anything else? Any other suggestions from your part?
Yeah, I play Wordle now, like when I remember, obviously, and I try to do it with inappropriate words and see if I can still guess it on the last one. And I think I've gotten like 10 straight guessing like penis and boob and like titty.
Mature. I like the way I like your style there. But yeah, check out Hurdle. I feel like the game hasn't gotten to the next level of popularity yet, and I wanted to expand and someone to buy it so we can be more music, not from SoundCloud.
This week in Shared Universe.
All right, this week in the DSG, Dork did Deep Water, Mac and Goo did the 1989 classic Aliens. CMM did the re-release of their first debate pod. TLDR did comics. I've heard it both ways. We are doing Psych episode 5, season 4. Sean Gets the Yips, which is probably one of my all-time favorite episodes. And then what else do we have here? We have Shime Time. He be streaming on Twitch along with Dr. Joe, and Arvon D and Keith have been streaming on the Dork YouTube, so go check that out as well. I think Jason has left the building, so
I had to go pee.
You had to go pee. Wow, in the middle of the podcast.
I literally was about to pee my pants. I'm not gonna lie, it's never happened before, and I thought I could get it in time, but I didn't.
Good for you.
Thank you. Did I pee? No, not even a little tinkle on the.
No calico cut.
No, it's starting to come in now. Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, check out all those guys and what they're doing. Next week, obviously, Bill, it's WrestleMania week. We're either going balls out or we probably won't talk to each other for another 3 weeks. It's usually the way this podcast works. But we really do appreciate all of you listening. Please, if you could, leave a 5-star review over on the iTunes. Any suggestions, anything you want to see from us, let us know. We got a lot of ideas. I also just want to let you know, this little spoiler into a spoiler. There's going to be like a big DSG collective poll, like top something coming out. I don't know if they've revealed it or who. I'm beating around the bush here, but I think that's when we're gonna tag team it. I got to reach out to see. We've talked about this video game thing forever. I just have to do something about it. But I think that's the perfect time because there'll be a lot of attention on the grouping. So that could be the time to hit it with that. And
I like riding coattails.
That's it. Well, listen, you get right. It's like in a race, a bike race. You get behind the fast person, downwind, Bill, downwind. But please do go follow him at Billy Yee 2411. Follow me at Jason D Rossi. Follow us at the Pop Culture Piledriver. Subscribe, be a friend, tell a friend about us. Let them know. We talked about Scott Hall this week. There's more stuff to come. But really appreciate you all listening, and you have yourselves the most amazing week. Bill, any final words for our fine folks?
Slap it on a biscuit.
Frank says hi.